Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Employee Dialogue Series 1, Session 4. I hope I can be audible. I'm audible enough for all of you all. Just a few ground rules, please. I have muted everyone. Any questions which you may desire to have at the end of the session, kindly put it in the chat box and I will refer it to the panelist, Mr. Shashi Kiran Shetty. We are also recording this session live, so the YouTube link is also available for you whenever you desire to watch it. So, good afternoon. Welcome back to Employee Dialogues Session 4. We are truly honored to have amongst us today a living legend, and it's still a privilege for me to interview him and to have a fireside chat with Shashi Kiran Shetty. The subject: how an entrepreneur's ingenuity built the first global logistics company. We truly owe Shashi a debt of gratitude for putting India on the global logistics map. He is the chairman of Cargo Logistics, ECU Worldwide and Gati, and he leads India's biggest integrated logistics service provider and global LC consolidation leader. Today, All Cargo operates over 160 countries in more than 300 offices, employing more than 10,000 members. Mr. Shetty has also been appointed by the Ministry of Education, Government of India, as the chairman of the Society and Board of Governors (BOG) of the National Institute of Industrial Engineering (NITI), which was very recent, India's premier and only institution offering postgraduate courses in industrial engineering. He also has been bestowed Belgium's highest civilian award, the distinction of Commander of the Order of Leopold II, by His Majesty King Philippe in 2015. The Lifetime Contribution to Freight Award at the Global Freight Awards London, Entrepreneur of the Year in the Services category by Ernst & Young, Global Visionary at the Economic Times Family Business Awards, Global Indian Maritime Personality by the Maharashtra Chamber of Commerce, Industry and Agriculture, CEO of the Year with Best HR Orientation at Asia's Best Employer Brands Awards are some of his other national and international recognitions. The University of Mangalore has also conferred on him with an honorary doctorate for his remarkable professional achievements as well as philanthropic contributions. Shashi's wife Aarti is a non-executive director at All Cargo and heads the CSR efforts of the group. His son Vaishnav, who graduated from Emory University in the USA, now heads All Cargo and ECU Worldwide's digital initiatives. His daughter Shoka, who is currently studying in Northwestern University in Chicago, will graduate in 2021. Mr. Shashi's brother-in-law, as we all know, is Adarsh Hegde, the Joint Managing Director of All Cargo and Managing Director at Gati AWE. Besides all the work, Mr. Shetty is an avid sports enthusiast and art aficionado, and also is a follower of Sadhguru Jaggi Vasudev. He was in the news, as we all know, in 2015 when he purchased the iconic Ashirwad Bungalow of the yesteryear superstar Mr. Rajesh Khanna. We truly are honored to have him with us on Employee Dialogues today and sharing his story in a short time with us. Before I begin, I would like to add that it is virtually impossible to encapsulate the life of Shashi Kiran Shetty in half an hour, 45 minutes or even 1 hour. So as a first, Employee Dialogues will be doing this in a series of 2 parts. Today we will deal with the business aspects of Shashi and how he built his global logistics empire. And in the next part, we will deal with the personal side of his life and the people who were with him from day one to make this great story happen. Welcome, Shashi. It's truly an honor to have you here with us. We have a record number of participants anxious to hear you today.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Xerxes, Shantanu, for organizing this Employee Speak. I think it's a very unique and a very impressive initiative started by Employee. And I also like to thank the entire Employee fraternity, the entire membership and the committee for agreeing to let me speak to you today. And as you know that Employee always carries this special feelings in my heart because MTOI revived me and myself with the
Yes.
blessing of late Captain Srivastava, chairman of SCI, and subsequently supported very dearly by Mr. Rangnekar. Tushar, me, and a few others have spent some very memorable time in the SCI boardroom discussing about the various strategies. And one of the things I must say that the whole MTOI logo was designed by my team, and so that's something will always that is something will always be there, and whenever I see it, it reminds me of those good days.
No, thank you very much for that. It's actually a very enticing logo. We use it very proudly.
Yeah.
And actually, you're just coming back home today. You're not a great speaker.
It's almost like that, and I'm so glad that MTOI is in the right hands, and you guys are doing such a brilliant job and created a niche for yourself in the logistic industry, and the governments and the corridors of power looks at it with more respect. So I'm extremely glad about that.
Thank you.
Anyway, to say a few things, I don't think it is.
If I could, I'll just start with if you don't mind. You started from a very, very humble background. You started as from Mangalore, which is not really known that much for its seafaring routes. More or less, Mangalore is known for expats to the Gulf and making success stories there. You come from a town which has created more billionaires than any place else in India. You're one of them now. So tell us a little bit in a very short brief, because we have loads of questions for you on your starting of your journey from Mangalore and how you landed up in Mumbai in shipping.
Sure. Okay. Let me just thank all my good friends who supported me all these years in my career. I am always grateful to them, and I'm always happy to help everyone who helped me in the past, and obviously those who are really in need. That's a starting point. The starting point I wanted to make. And the second, obviously, I am not even from Mangalore. I'm 5 kilometers further down south of Mangalore, a place called Bantwal, where I did my graduation, and I belong to a family which was into business. And as I was growing up, unfortunately, the business didn't do well, and a lot of responsibilities fell on my shoulder. Probably I would never have come to Mumbai if our business were to do well. Maybe I would have gone into politics, because a lot of Bunt members are in politics, and obviously I couldn't become a doctor because a lot of our fraternity also into doctors and lawyers. So anyway, that didn't happen for me. So I came to Mumbai looking for a job. One of my relatives gave me a job in a shipping agency company called Sangam Shipping, which was owned by DC Cooper, and subsequently worked for Modal Transport for a brief while, for 1.5 years. I learned a lot of shipping in that company, and then I moved on to Patwalk for 2 years. No, actually 1 year. And then I really felt, although Patwalk is a great brand name, but the diversity of shipping I was in ITTS was not available in Patwalk, being a very structured organization. So I ended up in a operations role, and I felt like fish out of water. And after Patwalk work, I was still very young. I was only 24. So there was no another job for me to take up. So I decided to start my transportation business in the port of Mumbai. And 10 years I ran the transportation business, handling ships, handling containers, handling project cargo, learned the ropes, made some good money, and bought my house in Bandra West, a place called Rizvi Complex. Got married to my lovely wife, Aarti. That was in 1988. And 1988. So everything came through this job, and I just fell in love with that. And more importantly than that is the shipping as a business itself. It is such a fascinating business. I got involved in tram business, I got involved in tanker business, I got involved in liner shipping, I got involved in livestock carriers, and of course freight forwarding. So that taught me a lot. Those 4 years taught me a lot, and the 10 years really grinded me. It was a very hard time of my life to make sure that the ends meet and make sure that I started with 25,000 rupees capital, and that was a real struggle. And
you started with one forklift or something like that, or two forklifts, right?
I started with one forklift, and then we ended up with 4. Then, of course, within 2 years, and then that's when we started getting more business contracts from various shipping agencies. Were my main customers, particularly companies like Jem Bakshi, South India Corporation, M. Dinshaw, and those are the kind of companies where I did a lot of business with. Yeah.
Amazing. So from a person who didn't know what a ship looked like to today being the largest shipping group in India, it's a fantastic journey, encapsulating, I think, around 35 years or 40 years of your...
I came to Bombay in 78, so that's 22 plus 20, that's 42 years now, yeah.
40 years, wow. So quite fast, good run rate.
Yeah. Time just flew off.
You were a traditional transporter. Most people have big success stories in that story spectrum itself. But you went into something unheard of at that time, which is LCL consolidation.
Yeah.
Okay, it was small packages. It was a very alien and a new concept. And how did that come about? Because that was your big break, if I recall, from where you really shot up, and that was your turning point in your life for the big league. How would you...
Yeah, I don't want it to have a transportation as my aspiration to grow the business, because I loved shipping, like I said, right? I always wanted to get back into shipping. I wanted to own ship one day. That was my ambition, but that story didn't last long, because I realized very quickly ship owning is not an easy business, and that is not something for me, and I decided to move out of that. Because that is kind of impacting my other businesses. It's a very fascinating story. I had a friend called Dipankar Ghosh. We used to meet very often, and Dipankar Ghosh used to know a gentleman called David Phillips, who was the owner of Freight System. And Freight System wanted to come to India, and then they appointed a company called Zodiac Shipping as the agent, and there were 3 other partners. And that's how we got exposure to the LCL business. And that unfortunately company didn't last, because there were differences with partners. And then what happened was David Phillips came and started his own company in India, and then got the opportunity to start AMI. AMI wanted to come to India. My dear friend Dinesh Lal, put me as one of the candidates for to be appointed as the agent for AMI. AMI was not sure what they wanted. We thought that LCL, since we learned recently about the LCL business, we proposed why not we do LCL consolidation out of India. And CMB at that time used to operate direct services to Europe and Africa. And thanks to them, they gave us FAK rates and gave us the opportunity to load LCL business, because they were not very keen on loading LCL cargo. And slowly, in those days, the shipping lines are anyway wanting to move out of the LCL business, because that is too much of a headache for them. And the LCL shippers were not too happy. The freight forwarder friends of ours are not very happy. Whereas LCL, you need to fill a container, and you got to satisfy so many customers in one container. And this is a very specialized business. They're happening outside India. And AMI had offices in Africa and in Europe. So fortunately, we've been able to convince them, and they readily then accepted to work with us. That is how the whole LCL foray happened. And then when we did LCL, we also did a lot of full container load business together with that.
And the rest is history, as they say.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm coming now to the real big one. See, Shashi, you have taken many risks in your life. I've watched your story very closely. You bought over Equine, which was your partner and principal, with probably 5 times your revenue. It was unheard of at that time that anyone would buy their own principal. I mean, we were just always to be very blunt, a servant-master relationship traditionally between an agency and a principal. So how did that story happen? What possessed you to do this? Because it's a very bold step. You could have gone, if it would have gone wrong, I think the story would have been a disaster, a wipe out almost. So how did you take that, and how did you take that step?
Yeah, when AMI started their own office in India, they offered me to start a joint venture with them where they would be majority shareholders. And I said, after a lot of thoughts, I said it didn't make sense. It didn't appeal to me. And then I was looking for another network, and fortunately found EQ. Again, good word by Vincent Hachey and Dinesh Lal. That's how the recommendation happened to EQ. Although EQ were known to India, and I went there and visited the EQ management a few times. They were very reluctant in the beginning because they already had a bad experience or not very happy experience, and they don't want to change the agent, very easily unless they know us very well. And they did their due diligence, and then finally, after about 6 months or so, we had a 6 months period with AMI to depart, and EQ finally decided to work with us only from Bombay, although they had containers going to Chennai, Delhi, and Calcutta, and all these places. So they wanted to test, and we started the relationship. Relationship went very well because they were not getting any containers in return from India. They used to send containers here. So for us, it worked out beautifully because we were getting their containers, which AMI was not sending any, and we used to send our containers to EQ. So that relationship became very strong. And subsequently, after a couple of years, after a lot of follow-up, they decided to start working with us in Chennai and other places. So we became the exclusive agent in India. I knew one day EQ will come to India.
You mean set up their own office?
They'll set up their own office. So
Yeah.
what I decided is that I proposed to them, after resetting up the company in about 20 odd locations, we thought that why not partner with them outside India, because they were growing, right? We used to ship a lot of containers to Dubai and also in Singapore and South Africa. So step by step, I formed a JV with them. In the process, I diverted their mind out of India so that they could focus on the other market, because it's just not an agency relationship. They couldn't have found another agent also that easily in India. They could have taken our people and started some company that they were doing in the past with other agents. That could have been a possibility. So I kind of blocked that situation, and then did the joint venture. And the joint venture was in, like I said, Dubai, Singapore, and that worked out very well. And that brought us very close together. We also invested in a warehouse jointly in Dubai. Subsequently, EQ got diverted out of India, and they started looking at United States, Scandinavia, and few of the other European markets and all that. So while they were growing rapidly, they made some strategic error. Their checks and balances were not good. There was a lot of non-core businesses EQ was in. And unfortunately for them, their US business also did a lot of damage to their business. They lost a lot of money. And they brought in a private equity investor. And then they gave too many rights to the private equity investor. This is something the entire industry should know, that you got to be very careful when you work with private equity. They're very good. I work with private equity. They are good capital to have. All that is good, but you need to be careful, right? So EQ got into financial trouble, and they were looking for investors. They tried many places. They could not find anybody. And I went and told them, look, what is the amount of money that you need? So they asked for some $15 million or something like that to get the private equity out of the company. And fortunately, at that time, Indian market were very buoyant, and I was able to raise $12 million. And then I invested $15 million in EQ for 33% shares. That we need majority, at least 50-50, if not majority. I should have the rights, and I should also have a right to put my CFO there, because I knew that their CFO was not good enough, and that's why they got into trouble. And you also got to know what's going on in the company. So then 50%, I went into the company, realized the company has a far more value. I decided to go for 50%. After 1 year, we decided to go 100%, because then we went public, right? So we raised mostly private equity and public money to buy EQ. And it was a very structured deal. It was not buying one day. It was a very calculated, very thought-through transaction.
Yes. But did you ever feel that were you 100% sure that it will work out, or did you ever feel that? And was there a plan B?
The good thing is, EQ, all the people were known to me, and the business was known to me, and they were handling our businesses at the destination and origin. So I pretty much knew everybody there, right? So it was a great comfort in that sense. But definitely, I had a lot of sleepless nights. I had a tremendous amount of stress initially to digest the acquisition, bring about so many changes. We had to shut down a lot of contracts that they had, non-core businesses, closed offices which are not loss-making. We also had a crisis in India. One of my relatives passed away, and some of our people left around the same time. We were implementing a ERP in India, so that unfortunately failed. But overall the company did well, and the acquisition. I put a lot of my time and effort in making sure that the acquisition worked out well, and that of course took us almost 10 years.
Yes,
and
yes.
On the back of that, then we acquired about another 8 companies. We acquired 3 companies in China. Our American partner, we acquired 2 companies in Rotterdam. Our full container load business globally. So there are a lot of acquisitions on the back of that. On the back of those acquisitions happened, right? So.
Yeah, fantastic. So this was one of your biggest risks which you took. Any one more risk can you name before we move on to the next, which was like a make or break, or one of the biggest gambles you took, and which actually worked, but which it could have gone either way during your.
It was not such a big risk. We started the container freight station in JNPT, as you know, and we went outside the CIDCO limit because CIDCO was selling the land at 4 crores an acre, that too on lease. And I thought there is no sense paying that kind of a money. We did some survey and found that there were land just outside the CIDCO limit. There was one bridge that is connecting, and we made sure that the bridge was strong enough. And then first time when I went there, the entire place was full of paddy fields, and the Agri Sena was very active in that area. So that was a very risky land purchase, and then putting the whole structure without knowing what is the consequences after we develop the facility, right? From the local politicians and the local farmers and all that. So the idea of setting up a CFS, I must be very frank, was to move our LCL business there, because as all of you know, CWC at that time was quite a bit of a bad shape because of the labor issues and transportation issues, and our people had to spend sleepless nights there. So my heart was going out to my people, the way they were conditions under which they operated. That is why we built one of the world-class CFS and took all the risk, and that eventually we couldn't use it for LCL, but that was really a blessing in disguise. The ports were congested. The government of India asked all the ports to vacate containers and put them in the CFS. So CFS volume went through the roof just about the time when we were getting it ready, and we used to store over 10,000-12,000 containers and no place to walk. So that was very, very profitable and very good business. And then rest is history. All of you know the whole town is now full of CFSs and empty yards, and that whole town is so much grateful to me every time I meet them, that I create a lot of fortune for them and jobs for them.
Good. That's fortuitous timing as well, and good vision. That was actually one of my questions, that you were one of the first CFS operators private who went in the private sector. Am I right at that time?
No, there was Maersk and GDL. They were already there.
Yeah, but those were MNC sort of thing. You were the first. GDL was.
No, they were in the CIDCO limit. I was the first one to go out of the CIDCO limit. Then also came Panvel.
And you did buy, if I recall correctly, you did buy GDL out, right? Recently. No. Okay. So
GDL is a public company and they have a real operating license.
Okay. No, then I'm sorry, I mistook it with the other Mr. Prem Kumar's. This is the company which you bought, the other CFS from Delhi, the owner which you had bought.
No, we bought from the Liladhar Pasu and Company, their land, which we bought it's opposite our CFS, and then we
Okay.
developed that one. Now that is the one which is operating. Our first CFS now we turned into warehousing complex. We're building 700,000 square feet warehouse there, A-grade warehouse.
Fantastic. Now, my next question before we open the floor, just last two questions before we open up the floor. There are a few questions in the chat box as well. You were in your 42 years that you have been there must have been several setbacks as well. So, but you have obviously prevailed on them. Can you name at least two setbacks which were really, really hard and which were do or die situation, and how you got out of that?
I don't think I ever had such a setback. Yes, there were some setbacks in my ship owning business. So, and also the container service that we started from Northern India to South India, South India to North India, the same lines as Shreyas operates Play. That didn't work out. So overall, it was not a big setback, nor it was a big financial impact also. Probably we're broken even, but the effort was far too much. So that's the reason I lost my heart in that business. And more we are looking into asset-light businesses and real estate-related business, warehouses and CFS and ICDs, other than EQ, NBO and contract logistics.
That was my next question. What is your idea on the future? It is now people are moving off from asset-heavy industries to asset-light. I think you have also shed some weight in your heavy lift transport division, etc., which is a very asset-intensive company. You have shed some weight in the heavy lift transport division as well. I'm aware of that, and it's an asset-intensive. What is your advice to entrepreneurs for the futuristic? In the future, what should our ideas should be for the next 5 to 10 years?
I can give you one advice. If you want to scale the business, it is very important to have not to mix asset heavy and asset light business, because asset heavy business has a very different DNA and a very different mindset and very different skill sets that are required. Okay, and asset light business is a service business, and it can be a professionalized business, and for both to happen, you need to have a scale. So I think, our industry is very, very fragmented and a lot of entrepreneurs in our business. So that's why it's probably difficult business for scaling up unless the one follows the route what I adopted of acquisitions. And acquisitions has its own inherent risk and it has its own inherent
It doesn't work for everyone. It doesn't work for everyone.
Yeah. So for sustainability standpoint, if you want to professionalize the business, then one obviously is a scale, and your business need to be always well capitalized, right? And the third thing obviously is you need to bring in technology into play, right? Whether it is your own technology or partner with some of the startup companies, work with startup companies as one of the investors. Early investors, if there is a strategic fit, is my recommendation. The other side, if you want to get into a capital-intensive business, then build a business where you allocate your time, because capital-intensive business, you always need entrepreneurs to be on the ground, managing day-to-day. You can't delegate it and make things work because the environment is very difficult. Right? So that's the reason I have no deep interest into expanding a crane rental business, particularly project business and ship owning business. These are two setbacks that I had. If we were not to get into that business, probably we would have been far better capitalized today. In spite of the company doing well, we are not doing great in the capital market, which is one regret I have, because we have the mixture of so many things in one company, which capital market find it very hard to analyze. And to add to the complexity, we have global business, and none of the Indian analysts are tracking the global business. So that's why the valuation of All Cargo is pretty low comparatively.
Okay.
So that's my advice. So all the other businesses you can still manage through outsource model. Like say for example in Gati, we now have 5,000 vehicles, which we don't own any. We own few, but I told them to get rid of that as well.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you. Just before we throw open, last thing, can you tell us more about the distinct honor of you being appointed as the president of NITI? What you envisage? What is your vision for that? And how you are going to take this forward?
NITI came to me as a real big surprise. They had put me in the board about a year ago, but I didn't attend a single meeting because some reason, the lack of communication. And I had told them, look, I just don't want to be a member because as a member, I can contribute very little and I don't have the time for that. I had told them if there is a leadership position, you let me know. Then I may be interested because I'm always interested in the educational institution. And about a month ago, I got a letter from them that you've been nominated to receive our award for the highest business award that they have on a yearly basis. And I was very happy that I've been chosen for that. Ministry of Education has appointed me as the chairman, and I had no clue. So they didn't even ask me whether I'm interested. Anyway, so I was very thrilled, very delighted, and that's the kind of organization I wanted to head. The most important reason that why I'm excited about NITI is number one, it is in Mumbai, and Mumbai doesn't have a IIM. Okay, although this organization sounds like industrial engineering, but industrial engineering and management. Say they do postgraduate diploma in engineering and also on the management side. They have quite a few, three courses, 2 years MBA, 1 year not MBA, post graduation, and also 1 year executive education, and there is one more they have on environment and safety, right? And I felt all these three things are very relevant to the logistic and supply chain industry, particularly the industrial engineering, which teaches you very high degree of process improvement and process management, right? And which is very relevant to supply chain and logistic industry. And honestly, I'm telling you, I'm extremely thankful that I've been put there, because our industry can really benefit from this institution. I'm appealing to all of you through this forum that please go to the campus and start looking at hiring some of the brightest of the bright people. They turn out. They have a student strength of 1,200 altogether. They also do about 25 students are doing PhD. You could actually hire and in the campus and bring them into your organization for change management, productivity improvement, because that is the name of the game. If you are not able to reduce our transaction cost, if you are not able to onboard customers digitally, if you are not able to keep a live track and trace and all the information that a customer need in the future, it will be very difficult for our business to grow, or I would say even to survive. Very important that you bring those kind of talent, and our industry is starved of talent. And this organization, of course, you are familiar with. There are many other organizations as well, but this is now ranked among the 12th in the country, and it's the only industrial engineering institution. And we are hoping that we will be able to scale this institution even better in the next 4 years of my chairmanship, along with the many other improvements that I have in mind. We're in discussion with the institution. So that's the background, and I'm extremely fortunate to get a position like that in this premier institution.
A proud moment for all of us, Shashi, and I'm sure it's going to be a path-breaking thing for us as well. Thanks to you.
Thank you. I really hope. I know that industry always feels proud about me and many of our colleagues who have done well. And our industry is so much coexist, and we support each other and we have such wonderful relationship in this industry, and I have so many good friends, and so many of you have supported me in my early days, and even today I'm thankful and I'm grateful to all of you for supporting me and sending me your good wishes.
Thank you. No, pleasure. It's well deserved. We are very proud of you. You have put us on the global map, the first MNC, global Indian MNC, homegrown. So we are really, really proud of it. Shashi, a few questions from the chat box now. From Arun Kumar, the first one, Mr. Arun Kumar from Delhi. What would you say was the turning point for you, moving from a small firm to the big league, or was it a steady, sustained growth that made you reach the current status? I think we touched upon that briefly.
Yeah, I think some of the very important milestones in my life, starting with my own business, then starting All Cargo, then starting the container freight station, then acquiring AQ, then going public, then bringing somebody like Blackstone as an investor in the company, stakes in China and US, then now buying Gati, becoming a chairman of, these are all a combination of many things which have been a game changer.
Good. Yes, it's been a cocktail of success, you can say.
Thank you.
So coming, the next question is from Ashish. Having entered into all types of services in the logistics arena, what is your next move within logistics or outside the logistics space? Very interesting question. We are anxious to know that.
I don't know how many of you really know. I have a real estate and a financial services business where I'm a silent partner. We built one of the tallest residential building in Mangalore.
Yes, perfect.
Which is the 36-story ultra-modern tower, which Mangaloreans are very proud to present.
I believe it got sold out on the first day itself.
No, not on the first day. No, we still have about 10 odd flats to sell. But
okay.
We done well, and I kept a nice house for myself too. Anyway, then we as all of you probably know that we have completed construction about 3 million square feet of warehouse, and another 3 million under construction, and we want to build another 8 to 10 million square feet over the next 3-4 years. The land acquisitions are underway, and we have Blackstone coming again as a majority shareholder. We sold all the warehouse assets, 90% to them, because I don't want to own these real estate assets because they don't generate a good return on equity. They are good IRR business, but not a great ROCE business. So that's the second business. And third, I have a very, very dear friend. I have three very important people in my life. One, of course, is my brother-in-law, Adarsh Hegde. In the business standpoint, it's been a great support to me.
Yes.
And of course, my team is extremely passionate about what they do. They are high performing, very innovative, energetic, and extremely smart people. So that's I'm truly blessed with that. And I put a lot of effort in building a team, developing the team, and making sure that there is enough talent and bandwidth within the organization. I was talking about 3 other people. One, of course, is my wife, my kids. God has blessed me with 2 wonderful children. I have 2 other very dear friends, Bansal and Kaivan Kalyaniwala. Kaivan Kalyaniwala is a solicitor who's been my solicitor since last 20 plus years. Bansal has been my financial consultant for the last 20 plus years. And both of them are in the board of the company. They guided me, they've given me so much of support, both legally and financially, and also in terms of their friendship from time to time. Bansal wanted to start an NBFC, and we started that 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. Now we run a book of about 700 crore. We have 2 partners. One is owners of Navneet Publications, Mr. Sunil Gala, myself, and there's another gentleman called Virendra Gala. Bansal, of course, is also a shareholder. So they run the business. Bansal and his son run the business, and it's a fairly successful business.
No one knows about it. I think that's news to all of us. I think so. Banking now, sort of.
Yes. It's almost 5 years. Yeah.
Okay. So, and now I think they're opening up more. The government is opening more, so that business is going to boom because they're allowing the licenses to private owners as well now. That's what I heard you say.
Yeah, banking, as you know, in our country, banking has a huge opportunity. As the country is growing, as the country is, has so much of entrepreneurs. Our SME segment is huge. Our startup ecosystem is very large. So we serve those two categories, SMEs and startup ecosystem.
Okay.
Yes, at right time, it can become a bank. Yes, of course, in the future, let's see how it goes. There is a lot of opportunity for that business to grow. Yeah.
On a lighter note, Amtoy members should get a discounted loans. I mean, at a good interest rate in the future, if we apply.
I can give you an 11% interest. Nobody.
Okay, good. So they're already sorted. Our next question is from our president. Every time you have achieved significant success, you did not stop, you moved on. Have the new moves come by chance, or you had envisioned the same? This is very true. You have never become complacent or become comfortable. You are always on the move. Which is good.
Right. I think what keeps me going is two things, right? When you run a large organization, if you don't grow and you want to professionalize it, you got to have high quality people, and high quality people won't just come for salary. They come for growth, right? And if your organization doesn't grow, the company will have problem to manage it, right? That is point number one. And the point number two is, as the organization is professionalized, opportunities keep coming to you. And when you see some attractive opportunities, and it doesn't take away too much of my time or put me into difficulty, because I'm not doing my expansion through debt, except building these warehouses where the construction debt we have taken. But otherwise, I don't build business on debt. I use company money, or I use raise equity for growth. And I always maintain a very low debt equity ratio in the organization, which allows me to sleep well.
Even in your early days, sorry to interrupt, but even in your early days, you did not take debt on much debt?
Even early days. I did. It's not that I'm taking debt. I maintain a very healthy ratio.
Okay.
I have to have a very clear visibility. If I don't have that, I don't do debt. And the other very important thing I'm saying for the sake of the benefit of my experience to the others is that I always believed in proper checks and balances to make sure that our profit, no matter which part of the world, from which business it is earned, we have a special committee which looks and tallies every penny that we have earned and where is that money, and that money is counted, so that you don't end up. And we have other system where any profit that is shown, we want to see the money. Show me the money. That is the mantra in the company, right? Don't just show profit, show where the money is, right?
Correct. Cash is king.
And a strong internal audit system, high level of compliance. We don't like to, shortchange any law to the best of our abilities. These are some of the basic values that we follow in the organization.
Great. And his next question is, it is crucial to change the leadership style with the change of size and change of your business model, which has constantly been evolving. So how did you conceive the change of leadership style and team building model? Because yes, you have been an extremely hands-on owner, and you cannot micromanage everything. So now, how did you change it, and what did you bring about? You brought in professionals. I think you were the first person who brought in professionals from outside the industry to streamline processes. So can you dwell on that, please?
Yeah. I think the basic character of a human being does not change, right? Unless you learn, unless you adopt, and unless you change yourself. So I think, I'm been very fortunate that I have those qualities to change myself and being a continuous learner. And I always try to remain on the ground, right? With that, what happens is you learn, you adopt, and also always surround myself with smart people, right? And they also keep you on your toes, in a true sense, right? So that also in a way forces you to move out of your comfort zone Leadership basic leadership is about inspiration, right? How you inspire your people with your work and your behavior and your way of managing the company, right? So once you do that well, rest things fall in place. And other thing which steers the whole thing is the learning. And you should be up the curve, not below the curve, right? You should know what's going on. You should be able to visualize, think about the future. That is another character that I always, had in me. That I always think about, how do I not let this business fail, right?
Correct.
What can I do to protect my investors' wealth? How do I and I also wear two caps. I wear a shareholder cap and I wear a management cap. And I look at, as a management, how a shareholder will feel, and wear a shareholder cap to see how a management, how should I be the management. So that's, end of the day, I always say this, it's mostly common sense, right? So if you adopt common sense in life, people will have less grief.
True. Next question is from Kayur Gandhi. What is All Cargo doing to attract young people in our industry? Because as you know, they are more, it's not a very sexy business, right? I mean, people are more attracted to banking, to finance, to private advertising. Ours is not that, glamorous. So how do you bring in the young? I think Niti, you just said, is a good step forward. I think that will be a game changer. But what do you suggest, and what is All Cargo doing for that?
Before I answer that, I want to ask Kayur, has he really tried attracting good people, young people in his company, or spoken to his friends? Just ask him, just let him think about that. But to answer the question, honestly speaking, there is a lot of interest for logistics and supply chain today than ever before, because people think the growth business, people think that logistics will be a game changer in the future in the country. First mile, last mile, mid-mile transportation, companies will continue to outsource their inventory management to third-party professional players. There's a lot of cargo will move into express transportation. In America, there is nothing like express and LTL. In America and Europe, everything is express. Okay, so in India, a small percentage of LTL business moves in express. There's a big market which can be converted into express. So there is and plus the economy is growing. Okay, leaving the COVID time, otherwise the economy will continue to grow because consumerism is very high in India, and people are aspirational, right? And young people in this country, as long as they have a job, the economy will grow, right? So there is a big interest for young entrepreneurs, young professionals. But only difference is you'll have to bring them, but you have to commit yourself then to them that you're going to do everything possible to make this guy successful in your organization. You have to commit the time and make sure that he enjoys work. Then he will not leave. Okay. So they say, right? People leave managers. People don't leave companies, because when they join a company, they know where they're getting into. But what they don't know is their manager. So if their manager doesn't manage his team, then people leave. The manager could be yourself.
Correct. Last question before we move on and close, because we are running out of time, is that as a business owner, which are the three most important and crucial areas in the business which one should always focus on, no matter how big the business grows?
Yeah, I think it's a very simple and easy answer. Customer is your purpose of you being in the business, is in the core of what you do. Your employees, obviously, and the third is your other stakeholders. That is your investors, your suppliers, whoever the other people who are your consultants. So all these the purpose of you being there is for them in a way, right? Because of them you make money. Because of them you have a good job, a good profession, or whatever you call it. So customer has to be at the core of everything that you do, and then a lot of things start falling into place. So the other very important practice that I do is on empathy, right? I always try and put myself in the shoes of the other person to see how it feels. If you let down a customer, how I would feel in his place. Employee, much of pressure on somebody, how he would feel, stuff like that. You know, if you're empathetic, then most of the things starts falling into place.
Very true, very true. Shashi, I mean, it has to be a mutual understanding, and they have to be felt part of the family. I can understand that, and then to make them really give them ownership of the product.
Yep.
Last, as COVID-19 must have affected your group in a very big way, given the size. The bigger you were, the bigger in trouble you were. How did you your group marshal its resources to, stay above the game?
Yeah, we've been quite proactive. I have seen Adarsh working 12 to 14 hours a day or even more, marshalling all his people. I have seen our CEO in EQ doing something similar, Tim Tudor. I have seen many of our other business leaders who I'm not able to see, but 100% they've been doing their utmost to make sure that the customer's job gets done. We put our focus on becoming far more efficient in terms of our cost. We took various measures through what did the word they used? I'm not able to get the name, but it is about making sure that everything works. Okay, reducing cost, making sure the customers succeed, etc. And other most important thing what we have done is in this crisis is started two major projects of transformation of global business and of Gati using consultants. And both are huge projects and taken away a lot of our time, and we're able to see quite a bit of outcome because of those projects. And I'm very happy to say that we've seen the crisis as an opportunity, and we've been able to shave off a lot of cost. We've been able to do a lot of work on business development. We added a lot of new customers. We are going to come out with a work from home policy whereby at least 20% of our workforce will work from home in the future. So that would help reduce the size of the office and stuff like that. It's a win-win for employees and the organization. So things like that. So we spent a lot of time thinking about all these things and worked very hard.
Fantastic. Shashi, before we end, one last question from me actually.
Sure.
Did you ever think, I think many people will want to ask that question, did you ever think you will get this big? Did you ever think you will reach where you are today?
Never. Never. Never.
What did you envisage it would turn out like?
Not in my wildest imagination. I should be a liar if I say yes, but no, I never imagined. But I think I grabbed the opportunities that came along, as I said earlier, and I am able to visualize the future. I have some amount of courage and conviction in me, something that if I believe strongly about it, I go after that. And I always take risk in bringing in new people, put myself into a uncomfortable position with people challenging me, and some works out. Some people challenge you really good, some challenge you for the sake of it, and some don't last because of that, right? So these things happen.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Shashi. It's been an invigorating session. This is only part one. Part two will be even better when we dwell on your personal side and your people who are with you from day one. I would thank you very much once again. I would
Yeah.
request President Dr. Shantanu Bhatkamkar to give the closing remarks. Over to you.
I'm grateful. My first employee just got retired last year, and my second employee he still works in CFS business, and they are still very important people, and they participate in all our family functions and pujas and all that.
Fantastic, fantastic. And that's what's been you have carried your people with you on your journey.
Yeah.
Over to you, Mr. President.
Well, Xerxes has already thanked Shashi, but I feel it is too formal to thank Shashi because he is our own, he has been our vice president. What I would like to share is when the stalwarts were looking for a joint venture in their own company, or they were looking for selling company, Shashi went on and bought the biggest consolidator. That much ahead of time Shashi has been. One award, Shashi, you I think not shared with Xerxes is you are on the wall of fame of Triple FAI and only one amongst 3 people. So Shashi is also popular in Triple FAI and very much on the wall of fame of Triple FAI. Well, when someone achieves so much, he motivates you and you always like him to call him your friend. So all of us consider Shashi as a friend, and as much as we are proud of Shashi as an outstanding entrepreneur, he is equally a good human being. And in the next session, we will see the human side of Shashi. So with this, I can say I must thank all of you for participation. Thank Shashi and Xerxes for making it possible, and I think I look forward to have you all for the next session. Xerxes, are you announcing the time and date?
I will check up with Shashi's schedule and then we'll put it out to our members again, Shantanu. See, after another 10 days or so, I guess, if Shashi's okay and if schedule permits.
Sure, let's discuss that. Shantanu, you are the one who initiated the conversation. I must say, I was too crowded at that time with the problems that we were going through in Gati at that time. So that's why I couldn't commit you a date. And then fortunately, then subsequently, Xerxes got in touch and then all that worked out. I'm glad.
Yeah, we are also happy. I think everyone is happy.
Yeah. It makes me very happy to speak to our industry and, even if 1 or 2 persons benefit a little bit out of whatever I said, I will be very, very, very pleased and, it becomes worthwhile. I don't want to be one of those who's responsible for a statement. The most wealthiest place in the world is the cemetery. I want to share as much wisdom as possible out there, so people can learn and use in their livelihood, in their career.
So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for coming. We are honored to have you all with us today. Thank you and
Thank
see
you
you
all, my
next time.
friends. I can see Harish, Shashi and Rubin and many of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.